Hi, everyone. It's Craig. Welcome to Cutting the Crap with Shap. Thank you so much for checking out my podcast. I really do appreciate it. If you get a chance, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and Spotify. That's how the channel grows. And it's really important for YouTube to have the algorithm. So comment, like, share. And if you'd like to be on the podcast, I have been incredibly humbled by all the people that I've had on. It's really made the experience incredibly positive. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm also very, very fortunate to have my friend Sandra Donaghue on today. Now, I'll give you a little background before I have Sandra introduce herself. So, for all those people that are social media bashers, try not to be. Okay. Yes, it's true that social media can be quite toxic if you allow it to be toxic. But I have met Sandra on something called Sunday Sparks. It's every Sunday. It's hosted by an amazing lady named Georgina Dean, who has also been on the podcast. She's amazing. But Sandra and I have connected, and she is a fabulous leader. Fabulous leader, educator, author, principal, code breaker, innovator, all of these things. And when I say those titles, they're actually legitimate. One of my takeaways when we're on Sunday Sparks is we all get a chance to talk. And whenever Sandra is speaking, I always am thinking about this, that man, she's got to be a great freaking leader. She's got to be a great leader because and obviously she's not at my school. I don't know that, but I can hear the stuff that she says, and it's obviously done at a place of caring for people, for caring for kids, and things that I myself am incredibly passionate about. So I'm very excited to have Sandra on. I'm going to have her contact information at the end of the podcast. So if you want to get in touch with her, please reach out. I'm sure she would love that. Sandra, how are you doing?
I'm so good. I'm so happy to be here, Craig. It's so exciting to connect. We were just chatting about our connections, and of course, we do shout out Georgina because I guess that's sort of how we got more connected. And again, yes, with the social media, we can choose to use that in a negative fashion, or we can choose to use it for the good and the positive. And out of our connections, I believe that we have been so blessed to find this gorgeous group of humans who are, yes, and blessed because we're all educators. But first of all, I think we're humans. And that's what makes us so connected, is that we just connect on this level of, the passions that we share, sort of the ideas that get us excited about, the future of education, and the fact that we get to share our experiences. And although we're global, because we're so far apart, we still feel extremely connected. So thank you so much for inviting me, and for the opportunity to connect with you.
And it's funny, you mentioned something, Sandra, I think is critical.
Mm-hmm.
So for people that are generally watching the podcast, I generally am having two kind of groups of people, and educators and wellness people in the fitness industry. But
Mm-hmm.
I think what is critical here is, even though Sandra and I are both educators, what I look at as more important is, are you a good person? Are you somebody who is trying to make a positive difference in the world? And you don't have to be in education to do that. You don't have to be in the fitness field to do that. You can be in any profession to make the world a better place. And I think that's something that you just mentioned, which is critical. One of the main purposes when I started the podcast, I remember coming up with three goals. And the three goals were obviously that the people that I have on and the people that watch have a positive experience. Check. The people that I have on, the people that watch actually learn something. Hopefully, check. Hopefully.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
number three, people walk away being able to think about something. Because those
Mm-hmm.
three things in my mind are critical. They're critical for a highly functioning society. And whether you're in a school or a business or a nurse or a lawyer or whatever your job is, I think those are critical things. So,
Mhm.
yeah, great intro. Um, Let me ask you a question. If you had to pick
Sure.
a word to describe you,
Hmm.
what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Just one, but
You
most
could do you could do
likely,
more than one.
yeah. Probably energy, and in every way that I sort of connect with energy. My whole life, pretty much everybody has always said, like, "Oh my gosh, where do you get your energy from? Where's your energy from? How do you find the energy for this?" So I say energy in just that because it's something that has often been asked of me. So I'm fairly positive as a human. Try to find solutions instead of the problems, because there's a million problems out there. But there's also a million opportunities for solutions that can come your way that you can create. And there's many ways to approach a situation. So especially when we're talking about education, we're looking at things that are new. People often are quite hesitant, they're nervous, they're anxious, and I'm always thinking, well, this is an opportunity for us to do something, and to lean into it and to find a new way to approach something. So instead of, being negative about something, I try to be positive. And also because I have a lot of energy, I can usually, yeah, I can, sort of bring that into different spaces and places. And I have a tendency to be quite highly energetic at work, and try to infuse that in others, like to tap into other people's energy as well. But I have mutual respect and admiration for all the different types of energy that exist in the world, because I do believe that it's important for us to have all of that, right? We can't all be like me. And I think the other thing that's always stood with me is that people have always said that my whole life to me. They've always said, well, I'm not like you, Sandra. I can't
Mhm.
be like you, Sandra. And I'm always like, that's great. Do you know what I mean? You don't need to be like me. It's okay for you to be you and for me to be me. So don't try to change me, and I won't try to change you.
Mm,
In that, I'm going to honor and respect the energy that you bring into this space. So I would appreciate you doing the same for me. So I
mm,
do feel like energy is a word that's kind of like just been part of my entire life. And most people will use that word when they speak of me. And just a little sidebar story. We went to an event and my family came with me. And so my children were meeting a lot of my colleagues for one of the first times. And almost all of them were like, oh my gosh, your mom is the Energizer Bunny. And so afterwards, my son says to me, Mom, like, seriously, is that your nickname? And I said, well, a lot of people use that to relate to me. So it's kind of been a thing. So I guess maybe energy, but to me, also another way for me to do what I do and to share what I do in a way that is authentic and genuine to who I am. So I do believe that energy is hugely impactful to me and also adequately describes me.
mm. Great stuff, Sandra. Great stuff. I
Yeah.
was listening to the things you were saying, and
Hmm.
I have similar qualities.
Hmm.
The people that know me, well, people that I work with, they will always say, "Oh my God, how are you so positive all the time?" And I mean, there's so many ways we can go with this. I think a lot of it's choices.
Hmm.
It's choices. But
Hmm.
the thing that you said that I think really resonated with me most is, obviously I know your energy because I hear you all the
Hmm.
time,
Yeah.
and your energy. This is I think this is the bigger picture of that. Your
Mm-hmm.
energy is authentic. It's not fake. So there are people that their energy is fake.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not really who they are. Your energy is real. Like, I can tell, and the people that are watching and listening, they're going to be able to see that what you're saying, you're saying it with passion. You're
Hmm.
like, it's just who you are.
Hmm.
And the most important part that I believe you touched on, this is something I've dealt with a lot throughout my career, is
Hmm.
I've always been a positive guy. Always. This is my seventh year of being in education, being in wellness. And I'm not going to say all 37 of them have been fabulous, but I will say that I've always approached it in a positive light. And I've always felt blessed to be able to make a difference. But you said something that I get a lot. And it's funny. I'll relate it to food. So I'm a healthy eater. I always have been. Just part of my wellness stuff. And people will, so I'll be teaching a fitness class and the class will end and it's right at lunch.
Yeah.
So teachers will walk by at the end of the class and I'll be coming out of the fitness center and they'll see me and they'll all of a sudden put the food behind their back.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, what are you doing? And they'll be like, oh,
Yeah.
nothing. I'm like, listen, I don't care what you're eating.
Yeah.
You, oh, I know, Shap. Yeah. No. Listen, if you want to have a cheeseburger and fries, you have it.
Yeah.
I'm not judging you for what you're eating. And they're like, I know, but you're a healthy eater. I'm like, what's that got to do with anything?
I know.
That has nothing to do with anything. I am choosing to eat healthy and you're choosing to eat what you eat. And I'm not judging you for it, but it's funny because you said something that I think is so critical. And the way you framed it, I thought, Sandra, was really good. Listen, let's just honor each other. You don't need to be me.
No.
And I don't need to be you.
Correct.
But there's a critical piece, though, where I was just going to push back a little bit. I think this is the kind of thing in and it doesn't have to be education. It can be really anywhere. Make each other's lives better. So we don't need to agree. But if I'm walking away after having a conversation with you feeling much worse than when we started, that is a problem. That's a problem. Like that means that you left me feeling toxic. And I'll say that to people all the time. Like, we don't need to agree.
No.
But what we do need to do is we need to authentically respect each other.
Yeah. 100%.
Like, for real. And
yes.
As a leader, I was going to ask you, because I think this is difficult. So how many people do you lead at your school?
Oh, yes. So I have 630 students and I have like a complete and entire staff of 66 adults, right?
Okay.
With multiple roles and multiple, actually even collective agreements. And because, most of them are in a union. Actually, all of my staff are in a union. So, yeah.
So you have 66 people? Yeah. So how do you lead those 66 people when not all of them have the same viewpoint as you?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I think number one, for me, one of the things that I try extremely hard to do is to get to know them all individually and understand what their needs and wants are. I think I ask a lot of questions, which for some people stresses them out because they think I'm, just trying to find something. And I'm like, no, I'm seeking to understand. Right. So I do a lot of interest surveys. I do a lot of input, like asking, what do you need? What do you need from me? What do you need for yourself? How can I be of service to you? What do you believe is required in our school? What are things that we need to continue to do? What are things that we need to stop doing? What are things that we should be doing that we're not doing? Like asking all that stuff. And then making sure that if I am in a position to be able to align those things, then I really try to align. So I do a lot of information seeking. And then I offer a lot of individual or one-on-one, I call them fireside chats, and I meet with people to help to even unpack that. So if they've put something down on paper, I try to ask them more questions about it, and then see how it is that we can come to aligning our vision, right? So what do we actually want to accomplish this year is a great question to ask people all the time, right? So do we want our students to feel extremely engaged and welcome and valued and heard? And if we do want that, then how collectively can we all work towards the obtainment of that? And then how do each of our roles actually align to make that happen? So those are types of questions that I am always seeking. So I try to do that through a lot of collegial, collaborative, opportunities wherever I can. And, just really trying to be a person who's available, visible, and connecting to people, right? I want to know everybody's story, because when I understand your story, I have a tendency to then be able to be a character in your story that is a helper, not a person who is, causing you harm or making it more difficult for you to be, in the building. One thing that I learned probably very early on is that, it's easy to be a person who sits in judgment, right? But being a leader is a person who puts themselves out there and says, you know what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to judge. I'm actually going to come into this fully present and fully willing, to learn and to grow and to be in this place with you, and then to try to, make a difference. And sometimes that means asking hard questions. And certainly that means not being the popular kid in the class. But that's what leaders do, right? You have to be the person who's willing to go to the places and spaces where others may or may not be willing to go, and to ask the most difficult questions and to engage in those conversations that sometimes others try to avoid. But I try to do that through relationship, right? I try to do that by establishing a connection. And then also, you mentioned it as well, as saying, we may not agree on this topic, and that is okay. It is okay that we do not agree, but I don't want you ever leaving here feeling disrespected, unheard, undervalued, and not welcome in this space. So that's a goal that I do try to keep. And if somebody ends something, if I do have a connection, especially with staff, that didn't necessarily go the way that we wanted it to, I'll circle back. I'll always circle back. I won't leave that as a fractured relationship. I won't leave that as a conversation that ended horribly. And I will most definitely make every effort to again come to a place where we can just agree to either disagree or come to some sort of a working resolution, right? That's definitely a goal. That's a goal for me, for every person I connect with, including students, families, parents, staff, humans, my family, whatever it is, right? Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to give you 5 seconds to answer it.
Okay.
So be quick.
I will.
Okay. Do you believe you are an outstanding leader?
Yes, I do. Because I try every day to do that, and I have to believe in myself, right? So yeah, I think I am, and I always know that I can be better.
Okay, I want you to do me a favor. We're going to go back here. Okay. So you started your answer great, and then you kind of stopped. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Okay, let me ask you again. Do you think you're an outstanding leader?
Yes, I do.
Okay. The reason I say that is I'm listening to your answers.
Yes.
And I can tell you spot on. If every person led the way you led, or the way actually, if every person led the way you lead, our world would be a much better place. Much better place. Because I'm listening, I'm taking notes. I'm sorry for looking down. I'm just taking notes
No.
as you're talking. And I'm writing down stuff here, and it's so powerful to me because I don't see it often.
Oh.
I don't. Not nearly enough. I'm not going to say I never see it, but I don't see it enough. And my point was, the reason I kind of asked you again is you said yes, I am, and then you said I try to be, right? But I didn't ask you if you try to be. I asked you if you are.
Mm-hmm.
right? Which you are. It's obvious. Not about being perfect. There's no such
No,
thing as that. We don't know what that is
no, we don't.
because your intentions can be the best intentions of the world. And it's like you said, I'll ask people questions and sometimes it makes them uncomfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
For lots of reasons.
Yeah.
Lots of reasons. But that's not a you thing, that's a them thing.
Mm-hmm.
And but what you said though that I think struck me the most powerfully
Mm-hmm.
is the fact that when somebody disagrees, you circle back. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people don't do that. And I'm not even talking about leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'll say this. This is something I've said in an earlier podcast. I think it will resonate with you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was. I think it was last year. It was either last year or maybe the year before. I was coming out of my classroom
Oh yeah.
and I saw. I might have even mentioned this on Sunday Sparks. I'm not sure, but if people didn't hear it, I'll say it. I was coming out of my classroom and
Mm-hmm.
I saw a fellow teacher walking down the hall. Teacher was like, "Hi, Shap," and I'm like, "Hi, how you doing?" And I could tell they started just talking to me
Right.
and they were venting.
Mm-hmm.
And the helper in me was one to try to give advice. And I was watching their body language as I was talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I was picking up like, man, what I'm doing here is not helping.
Yeah.
Now I didn't catch it right away, but I started to catch it.
Right.
And then they were like, "Oh yeah, I got to go to lunch," and they walked away. And I could tell that it didn't go well, even though
Right.
my intention was not, it wasn't bad. I mean, I was trying to be
Correct.
helpful.
Right.
I walked into my room and I was like, I effed that up.
Mm-hmm.
So this goes back to circling back. And for
Mm-hmm.
everybody here, one of the most powerful things you can do,
Mm-hmm.
whatever role you're in, friend, leader, business, whatever you do, is when you walk away from a conversation, think about whether or not the intent that you were having worked.
Mm-hmm.
And if it didn't, don't just walk away.
Mm-hmm.
See if you could circle back. So what I did is it was during my lunch and I went to find this person.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found them, they were crying.
Oh.
And I went up to them and, we talked and they were like, I know you, Shap, your heart's in the right place. And I was like, I am so sorry because you weren't looking for me to give you advice. You were just looking for me to listen.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think the thing you said, Sandra, that's so powerful,
Mm-hmm.
multiple things, not judging,
Mm-hmm.
looking for opportunities, solutions
Mm-hmm.
over problems.
Mm-hmm.
That happens when a person is authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll ask you another question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that some people are much more difficult to work with than others?
Yes.
And
Yes, I
why do
do.
you think that is?
My most experience is simply that they're closed off to the opportunity, like closed off to the learning experience or the exchange of energy that makes them feel uncomfortable. And instead of being like okay with leaning into that space and going, oh, I feel a bit weird here, but I'm willing to go because I'm going to establish a connection or a relationship. And also because often people like to stay where they are comfortable, right? And so that feeling of discomfort or uncomfort that you have to engage in order to learn and unlearn and relearn and and to go into new territory is something that I think people resist. Right. I don't think that people are afraid of change as much as they're afraid of learning. I really do believe that, because the learning is hard, and we know that learning is hard. It's hard to learn. Think about, learning a new skill. I know you're into fitness. I love, yoga and Pilates and different things. And I can recall when I first started doing yoga, and I was a dancer my whole life, so I thought, oh, I got this yoga. Are you kidding me? And I went in there, and my God, I was tragic. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, but I had to engage in the learning. And what I really leaned into was the fact that, and I love this about yoga and its philosophy, is that it's a practice. So you're in there every day making micro adjustments. And then you just continuously are in this learning situation. And I feel strongly that if we adopted that mentality more towards everything that we encompass, that there were just simply in opportunities for micro adjustments to be like just that little smidgen better, that little smidgen more aware, that little adjustment that just allows us to open our eyes to see things in a different light. Wow, we'd be so much more ahead as it relates to education. And I think about if every teacher adopted that as they approach their students. Oh my gosh, imagine the potential that we could untap and unleash. So I'm a big fan of, not speaking out of both sides of my mouth. So I do want to be genuine to that in my own personal life, in my professional life, how I approach my staff, and then how I want my staff in turn to approach their students, and how I'm going to approach every student. So there's alignment in that, right? So I do strive for that. And I think, yeah, that would be phenomenal if the resistors could simply just see the opportunity that lies ahead of them. That would be beautiful, right? Sad that some people, so it makes it more difficult because it's harder work to try to strip away at those things. But the way that I try to get to that with more difficult, resistant people is to just continue to work on a relationship, try to find a connection, try to find a way to just relate to that person, and then maybe tap into that. Hopefully.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Everybody, I'm going to put a link in. It's going to be called Small Nuggets, Big Change. It's a podcast that I'm doing with Dr. Chris Jones.
Oh, yeah.
I think people will really like it because it ties into what Sandra's saying about these small little things that we do. So you're going to see the link. Please check it out. I think it's it's short. Every episode's under 10 minutes. It's
nice.
It's very powerful. You said something that I think is difficult. You said something that I hear a lot, and you said if resistors could just see.
Yeah.
So the part of that is not the resistors part. It's the just part.
Yeah, I know.
So I talk about this a lot. I've had this on other podcasts where I've said to people, whenever I hear somebody say it's just, right? But it's not just anything. Because you, Sandra, are a doer. You're not just a doer, you're a doer. And that's in your DNA for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I am a doer, and that's in my DNA.
Correct.
The struggle that I see, that I have really worked on a lot, and I will say that earlier in my career as a wellness educator, I didn't do it. I feel bad that I didn't do it, but I didn't do it.
Right.
I would always think about it's just.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they don't do that. It's just this.
I know.
Right? That is toxic. It's toxic. Don't do that. Who's ever watching this, please don't do that. Because we don't know. And I say this as a wellness person.
Yes.
As somebody who's coaching a lot of people on wellness. I don't want to say ever, but I try not to ever say to them, it's just this.
Oh, yeah. No, I know.
Because what happens is, for us, things might come easy.
Correct.
Because we're just who we are. We're not generally afraid of not being successful.
Mm-hmm.
whatever that means.
Sure.
I don't even know what that means. I
No.
really don't. I don't know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
But that term, and what I have found, it can be really effective. And I'm sure you do this because I'm listening to your conversation and hearing you,
Mm-hmm.
is we have got to be able to listen to what others say,
Mm-hmm.
but really listen.
Yeah.
Not listen and then speak.
Mm-hmm.
Listen.
Yeah.
Because, oh, go on, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that's a huge part of the uh like when I was referencing about not being judgmental, right? Or trying
Mhm.
so hard to sit in that space of just willing to listen and lean in. I love to, kind of like lean in, like what's happening here? Take stock of what's actually going on. To be an authentic and genuine listener to others is also a skill, and it takes a lot of practice. And I do believe that, and you reference this too, I've made many mistakes in the journey, but I take them as mistakes. There's small, micro opportunities to do better the next time. Love that.
Ooh,
Right.
ooh.
And so again, when I go back, and that's why I say about the circling back to repair and to restore. When I was first in leadership, I was trying to figure out, how to find the balance of being like a leader, being in relationship with my staff, being connected to others, and then still yet having to make, difficult decisions, tell people no when, they're constantly coming at you, and try to figure that out. So I think that I learned through making some of those types of errors without the circling back around, and then realizing that really that serves no purpose. So even with parents who I've had really, really challenging conversations and so on, at the end of the dialogue, a lot of times parents will say, oh, okay, um, okay, well, we'll pick it up another time or whatever. And I say, yeah, I go, please call again, or please feel free. And they're like, yeah, as if you want me to come back. And I say, no, of course I want you to come back. Right. Of course I do. Because I understand, first of all, number one, you're advocating for your child and you're passionate about your kid. My God, of course you have to be passionate about your child, right? You're their parent. You love them. So I'm totally on
Mm.
board with that. Plus I want them to know that I share that passion. Right. I share that passion, and I want them to be connected, and to feel that I am connected to them, so that I'm willing to work on this relationship. So a lot of times I ended up having to, call the parent back and to just do that check in, and just to say, we're still here. Now, some people aren't in for it. They're not. They don't want to actually repair that relationship. They would prefer to be more in a position of adversary, and that's okay, because that's where they are. But I continue to try to be authentic and genuine to who I am. So if and when I see that person again, I'm still going to continue to be me, and I'm going to continue to be kind, and I will speak to them, and I will do everything to try to establish a relationship and a
Mm.
connection. Some people would like to continue to resist that, and that's part of the journey, right? And so wherever we are, we just have to kind of try to be as authentic to ourselves as we can, because I think it's only fair to us who are trying to lead, and who are trying to um, be genuine about our leadership approach, that we have to continue to be that. Because when we toggle between being, this or that, or this for this group of people and this for that group of people, it's also extremely conflicting for ourselves. So just try to be authentic and genuine to who you are, and act in relationship with everybody who you connect with. And then hopefully you'll be able to repair if it's extremely severed and broken, but at least they will know where you stand and how you are
Mm.
entering into that, right? So like you did when you circled back to that person, you let your intent be known, and they understood that. It just wasn't a great connection at that moment in time. And that's okay, because you know what? We're not our perfect selves 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. And we know that. So we're all human and we're all fully flawed. And that's okay. If you go into a scenario like that, you can recognize that. Um, and I'm sure you've had this happen to you, because I've had this where staff have said, they've come up to me after and they've said, oh my gosh, like I wasn't myself the other day and whatever. And I'd say, well, I knew that. I could tell, because I know who you are. And I could see that you were maybe
Mm.
struggling that day, and that was okay. So whatever,
Yeah.
because who's perfect all the time, right?
You
Every
know,
interaction you have is not always going to be the best.
I'm listening to you, Sandra, and it's just funny. I'm just taking it in.
Mm.
I want to ask you. I want to ask you a question.
Mhm.
How are the academics at your school?
Well, right now, I'd say the students themselves perform extremely well. They do. And I do believe that we can up the ante in terms of our expectations of our students. But yeah, they're good, but I definitely see there's definitely some places for growth and improvement. But a lot of the students are extremely, they're good, studious. They love to, they're well, comfortable in their classrooms and their learning situations. I just would like to increase the learning engagement to a more thriving academic scenario for the students and for our staff, right? I love to engage the staff in that same level of learning, because I'm a big fan of everybody being learners. We're all learners at the building. And so we are all in that situation so we can equally feel it, and then we can help other students to experience it, and then continue to, work together towards knowing something a little bit better the next day. I always say to my staff, it'd be the saddest day ever if we knew everything there was to know, right? Because then what would we be doing tomorrow? So there's always that great idea of the wondering and the continuous strive for what's next, where to go next,
Do
because we
you do
don't
you
know.
know do you know why I asked you the? You're not gonna. Do you know why I asked you the question?
I'm not sure, but I have a couple of ideas, because
What do
the
you
way
tell me your ideas? What do you think?
Maybe because of some of the stuff that I was referencing and how I approach things with staff and how they reflected. But I'm not sure.
It's so funny just listening to you because, oh boy, I'm trying to choose my words here.
Sure.
Um, so I'll just throw this out to everybody. If you want to make a difference in whatever role you have, education,
Hmm.
business, where you work,
Hmm.
just do the things that Sanj was talking about. No, it's true. I'm listening to the things you're saying. And when I think about businesses and
Hmm.
corporations and schools that are thriving, thriving, I didn't say successful because I don't like that word. I don't know what that
Hmm.
means, but I'll say
Hmm.
thriving.
Hmm.
Um, I will, I will kind of go back to, I want everybody to just, I want you to think about this. So Sandra was talking about listening, not judging, circling back, seeking to understand,
Hmm.
being kind and empathetic, trying to make a positive difference for people, understanding that the ultimate goal is to help others. Those things are universal.
Hmm.
They're universal. In in my experience, I have never seen a situation where people that do the things that Sandra is doing that they don't work.
Hmm.
Ever. I have
Hmm.
never seen it.
Hmm.
I'm 59 years of age. I have been in the business world. I've been in wellness. I've been an educator. I have never seen a situation where failure happens when people do the things that Sandra is doing. And the reason I asked her about the academics, and this is
Mm-hmm.
what I really wanted to touch on, it is so frustrating to me. It's so frustrating when I see things that don't make sense. If you want things to thrive, listen, be kind,
Yeah.
don't judge.
Yeah.
Realize that not everybody's coming at things through your lens.
Mm-hmm.
Seek to understand, but really seek to understand. And this is a really key thing that you said. I will mention a quick story. About 6 years ago, I had a student in my class, and I was teaching a fitness class, and a situation happened. It doesn't matter what it was, but I had to call these two students after school with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had them after school. One of the students' moms got in contact with me and was very upset with me for
Mm-hmm.
keeping her son after school. And I explained the situation and why it was, and they didn't want to hear it.
Right.
Over the next 4 years, that student and that parent became some of the closest people that I've known,
Mm-hmm.
because the parent understood, maybe not initially,
Yes.
but they understood over time that my best interest was their kid.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't me. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
a power play. It was simply, listen. And I remember saying to the mom, like, listen, I understand you're upset that I kept your son after school.
Yeah.
And I understand that maybe you do not think that I handled that the way you would have.
Correct.
I got you. But I did handle it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And there are certain things that are acceptable, certain things aren't. What your son did was not acceptable. If you
Mm-hmm.
think it was, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't.
Right.
And we can totally agree to disagree, but ultimately, I have your son's best interest at hand.
Correct.
That mom, over the next 4 years, became one of my strongest advocates.
Yeah.
And guess what? Literally, this is no lie. About a month ago, now that student has graduated. They're no longer at school. They graduated 3 years ago. So it's been 7 years since that incident.
Right. Right.
That
Right.
student was walking past my house and stopped. Said,
Oh,
"Hey, Shap," and we started to talk.
yeah.
And they have the utmost respect for me,
Mm-hmm.
because they knew, they didn't know it then,
Mm-hmm.
because they were 14.
Right.
Now they're 21, and they do
Right.
know that
Mm-hmm.
I was looking out for them.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes back to so much of the things that you're saying, Sandra, that are so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
We must think about these things.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we doing something?
Oh, yes.
If we don't know why, we better figure out why.
Exactly.
Why are we doing something? What do we hope to accomplish from that why?
Right.
And how are we going to address what happens next?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes what happens naturally is great.
Yeah.
Other times, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of leader that you are, I bet you do those things all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're like, I think a lot of it is just also being willing to say that, you know what, okay, that didn't work, or, we're off course. We've lost our way. Let's get back. Let's figure this out. I had a lot of stuff that happened in the month of June that was really preoccupied a lot of the time, which took us off course. And, I said to staff, I recognize that we started things that we were unable to finish. But we'll find a way to put, some sort of like a solution or a resolution to this. And then we'll continue and we'll pick it up in September, or we'll pick it up and we'll, carry it forward. And I think that sometimes a lot of it is just being willing to say that. Like, one of the things that I think was a amazing learning for myself as a person in education was during the pandemic, where,
Oh,
all of a sudden I'm like, okay, hi friends, no idea what we're doing here. Okay. And I don't think that anybody does. So, but you know what we will do is we're going to do it together. So we're going to go through this experience together. None of us have ever, taught in with masks on and shields on and, whatever else, or like how many of us, taught fully remote, like online, and did all this stuff. But what we did was we created a situation where we were constantly learning together. And, we cultivated a team approach to everything that we did. And that's how we got through. And any way that I could support for my staff that were struggling, whether it was with technology or whether it was with, access or use or the internet or whatever. I was like, okay, we're just going to have each other's back because we're all muddling our way through this. Right. So the only thing sometimes you can do is get right into the trenches, and then ask your staff to do things that you're willing to do, and that you're willing to go along with them and then support them through that. That was a really tough time. And I don't know like how anybody claimed to know what they were doing. They were all liars because none of us knew what we were doing, right? Like, let's face it. It was like, what is happening? The whole world shut down and we were like, I don't understand, but we kept going, right? Like in education, we kept going. So we had to kind of reinvent, recreate, to me, that was a beautiful learning opportunity and it really showcased. But I think some people buried their head in the sand and tried to pretend like they knew what they were doing, and or they just let people flounder, right? Like to try to figure out on their own. And it's like, get out of here. Nobody knows what's happening one day to the next. So we just, tried to lean in. So I sort of look back on that time and I think, I feel extremely blessed to have been in education during that time, to witness it and to also be leading through it with, that mindset of, people, let's just figure it out and let's do it together. Because if we do it together and we band together, we can actually, be somewhat successful. So I look back on that period as actually two incredibly successful years, which were really hard. But, I learned so much. I'm so grateful for it. And for the fact that I was able to see that, no, none of us know what we're doing, but we're going to try to do it together. Yeah. And help those kids and, everybody else, those teachers. Oh my gosh. Like, it was a lot of pressure on people in teaching every day and trying to be like, how am I going to make this work? And how am I going to keep people engaged? And, so I tried to do my part wherever I could.
and
So,
the crazy thing about the pandemic,
yeah.
this kind of goes back to, I know teachers that loved it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I worked with people that loved it.
Mhm.
They hoped it would stay forever.
Yeah.
No, well, for
Yeah.
lots of reasons.
Yeah. Sure.
Some had kids at home,
Yeah.
and they wanted to be
Hmm.
with their kids.
Hmm.
Some of them just looked at it as, oh my God, just do this work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, various things. For me, I am not afraid to say this. When the pandemic hit, was it 4 years ago?
Yeah. I don't know,
4 years ago?
2020. Yeah.
Yeah, 4 years ago.
Hmm.
When the pandemic hit, um, I remember teaching a class, sitting in home, having
Hmm.
26 kids on, and my computer
Yeah.
freezing.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it at first
Oh, yeah.
until kids started to throw Shap. I can't. And I remember, uh, you know, asking a question and saying like saying, Sandra, tell me tell me what's the main nutrient in peanut butter, and
Yeah.
getting something like this.
Yeah. The
Sandra,
frozen screen. Yeah.
Sandra,
Yeah.
What, Shap? I didn't hear you.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to my wife, if this continues, I will retire.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I remember saying that because for
Mm-hmm.
me, it was
Mm-hmm.
so frustrating. But there
Mm-hmm.
were people that loved it,
Yeah, I
that
know.
loved it.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to one size does not fit all.
No.
It's totally dependent on each person's why, what's important to them. For me, sitting in my house, sitting in a chair, looking at a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
blank screens, horrible,
Yeah, exactly.
horrible. But other
Mm-hmm.
people
Loved
loved
it.
it.
I
Right.
know.
And but I took away this, and I used to say this to people who really hated it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People like me who hated it.
Yeah.
I would always say to them, here is the silver lining.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who says that technology is taking over teaching
Yeah.
is wrong.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
will always need teachers.
Yes.
Always.
Yeah.
I said, I don't care how many Zoom calls you have or
Mm-hmm.
Google Meets,
Yeah.
nothing is ever going to take the place of a teacher.
No.
And because people would be like, oh my God, this is going to take our jobs. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no,
Mm-mm.
no. No,
Mm-mm.
no. It's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing ever, but it's the best thing ever because all of these struggles and how many times technology doesn't work and how many times it
Right.
freezes up and how many times all the parents that realized what
Mm-hmm.
education was are now so
Yeah.
grateful for these teachers. They're so
Exactly.
grateful because they
Mm-hmm.
realize, like, hey, now you're sitting at home and you realize
Mm-hmm.
how powerful and how challenging it is to teach.
100%. And how difficult it was to keep kids engaged and how
Oh,
you had to balance all those things. Like it really, really, really did show the world how important educators are, what it is that we do, which is unique in, and you can't sit here and say just because you went to school, you understand what it is to be, an educator and how
correct.
our classrooms have changed, et cetera, et cetera. But, again, I love that, I would say to you, I've had the privilege of also being an instructor. I teach the principal qualification course here in Ontario, and I've had to do it online. I've done it hybrid. I've done it face to face and whatever. And I always tell everybody, hands down, lights out, face to face is the way to go. You can never duplicate. Never duplicate. You can get the stuff done 100%. Yes, you can do all of that, but that face to face connection, that dynamic that is cultivated by that that synergy that you create in a space where people can feed off of each other's ideas, where they can be more vulnerable and sort of organically create a topic, right? Because one thing rolls into the next. Those conversations that you have at the snack bar as you're chit-chatting with
Right.
the other people in class, right? But that's all value add, and that's the stuff that never goes home in a backpack. That's the stuff that never can be duplicated online because it's too stagnant, right? So that dynamic environment, that feeling that you have when you walk into a school, which is like an energy space, right? And you walk in and you're like, oh, I love this. This is so great. I love being right. That you can't, it's very difficult to duplicate that in an online kind of experience. And I always think about that. And I think even when we were back in the school and it was still with a lot of restrictions and there was all kinds of rules, there's nothing like the energy of a school. There's nothing like that feeling of a school community, and being part of that, right? And connecting to people on that, day to day, those little interactions, they're so invaluable. And that's what creates all of us, right? That's what helps to develop all the parts of us because we're not just about learn this, do that, whatever. Our classrooms are thriving places where kids are able to express themselves in ways that I don't think you can always just capture in an online platform. right? So you're so many people struggled during that time for so many reasons, and I don't look back on those years as the glory days, that's for sure, but I look back on them as being grateful that I was able to be part of it, to witness it, to also be able to hopefully create connections for people at a time in which they did not feel connected. So I always remained super connected to my staff in lots of ways because I knew how hard and difficult it was. And you indicated it yourself, where, just staring at flat screens and, it's too much. So many people were like, I'm getting out if this is what it's going to be,
Oh,
because
yeah.
this is not what I signed up for. So I would agree that that was a very, very difficult time. Um, yeah. Wow. But it taught us a lot too, right? So many invaluable lessons. And I think what you said about that idea of coming in, that newfound, even in some ways, refreshing beauty that we found in being back together as school communities, as being connected to people, and for parents to see and go, wow, educators, hats off to you. We're really noticing how important it is, and the role that you play, which is such a critical role in helping people to thrive and, not just survive, which is what we don't want.
Mm. Sandra, you are one heck of a person.
Oh, well, thank you.
I mean, I'm listening. I'll tell you what, the people that you lead are really lucky.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you.
It's true. I'm listening to
Mm,
you. You got so much passion. It's
yeah.
it's so inspiring to me, as an educator for 36 years, because I have that.
Yes,
But
you
I'm
do.
but I'm listening to you, and it's so invigorating to have a leader who has so much passion for wanting to make a positive difference. And not just
Hmm.
passion, you're also really insightful.
Oh.
Which I don't see that. I'm not gonna say never see it, I do, but
Hmm.
listening to you, first of all, I know the people that are watching and hearing this are going to walk away like, man, that is one great freaking woman. In our time, we have a little bit of time left. Is there something that you wanted to touch on that's important to you? And then if not, I can ask you a few more questions. But what is something that you want to touch on?
Yeah, you know what? Maybe just two little small little nuggets that I
Sure.
would like to say is just about the idea of one of the things that makes me incredibly passionate is also mentoring. I'm a huge mentoring person, coaching, guiding, mentoring, being available to staff. So I would put a plug out there for, those of you who are in a position to welcome new educators into the field. Please take care of those beautiful little people that are starting their career. Give them the time that they need and invest in them because they are the future. I think sometimes I was so blessed to have some incredible mentors along my journey very early in my school career that were instrumental in guiding me and taking me into the direction that I ended up in. But I would say sometimes, what we need a lot of is reassurance when we're first starting, right? That you're on the right path, that you're doing the right thing, and that if you make a mistake, you can recover from it. Because I do believe sometimes what ends up happening is our little young teachers are they're worried about, making errors and not doing everything, or, not knowing everything. And there's a lot of pressure on them to be, these educators, to balance everything, because we know the job is hard, right? Shap, it's not an easy job to be a classroom teacher. Some of us make it look super easy, but we know there's a lot of effort and energy that goes into creating that. Plus, our experience over time allows us to do things more naturally and organically. But with our young ones, I spend a lot of time when we long-term occasional teachers that are on contracts, and I make sure that I connect with them all the time, that I build them up, that I tap into and I recognize for them and say, tell them the things that they're doing well, tell them the opportunities that are in front of them, encourage them to continue to learn and to take courses and map out their plans with them. Like I spend time with them and I say, okay, what's your goal? What's your vision? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years, whatever? How can I help you get there? Here's some things that I would, say to you, invest in yourself, take this, do that, whatever, because we really have to help them to be confident in as they're approaching education. We don't want them to give up after 5 years and go seek another profession, right? We need these passionate young teachers to want to remain in the profession and to develop. So I say invest in the young staff and welcome them and embrace their ideas and give them positions of, allowing them to flourish and grow and to share what they have with the other staff. So I'm a big fan of that, and I encourage all leaders and educators to embrace that and to take that on. And then secondly is just to always, never lose sight of the fact that you're a learner. Yeah, like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I've been in it for a long time. I kind of feel like I know what I'm doing, but hey, I am so willing to learn something new, to try something different, to approach something from a new perspective, to go where people are telling me they want to go or where they need, and try not to make it about yourself, right? Which is hard to do. It's really hard to do because sometimes it's easy to just sort of like, I don't want to do that. It's extra work. It's extra this, it's extra that. But sometimes people tell you what they need in very subtle ways. So try to listen to that as well, right? Kind of recognize and honor that. Yeah. And if you can, make some good friends along the way that can help to lift you up, or that you can pick up the phone and you can say, you can scream and, establish those connections and collaborations. And when you admire another colleague, let them know that. Say, I saw that you did this. It is fabulous. Oh my gosh, I love that idea. Can you share that with me? Or would you mind if I did that with my staff? I love it. We have a little admin group, and we just exchange ideas all the time, and we just take bibs and bobs from each other, and it just makes us all better in the end, right? So I love that, and I think that education affords us that opportunity to just be continuously engaged in learning and refining who we are as humans, and hopefully passing that on to those that we influence each and every day.
I'll tell you right now, we're definitely doing a podcast part 2.
I would love that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm. What about your book? Where's your book at?
Yeah. Well, my book, here it is.
Put it up there. Okay, the popcorn effect.
Yeah, the popcorn effect,
yes,
which is our igniting kernels of leadership in modern school communities. And this beautiful brainchild here is definitely part of the pandemic connection. Wrote it with my girlfriend, Melissa Powell, another person who I admired, never worked with, and just was a huge fan of her work. And we connected immediately, and our energies just are like this. And then we co-authored this book, and it's basically all about that idea of igniting leadership kernels in each other, and allowing people to pop when they're ready, but give them the flavor and the inspiration over time to be able to develop that. It's chock full of ideas. We have connections and QR codes, and it links to our website, in which we have resources and just different things that we have to offer about leading, and then developing leaders, right? And finding them in your hallways and in the classrooms and so on. So huge passion project. Just loved the idea of being able to be to be able to share some of the experiences that we've had over time, and the idea of collaboration and connecting, because you know what? We can't do this job alone, Shap. We just cannot. We have to use the village and the people around us to help us to learn and grow, and then to survive and thrive, and just continue to get through the tough times, but also just to see that the possibilities for goodness are endless. They really truly are. I'm such a
Jeez.
huge fan, right? Huge
Jeez.
fan of school and learning and education. Oh my gosh.
I want you to send me a picture of your book too,
I will,
because I want that to be in the podcast.
for sure.
We didn't
Yeah.
even, God, we didn't even touch on things that I wanted to touch on,
Yeah.
but my God, it's going to be a part two.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I
Hey,
think it's because we're equal, you know, we've got that shared passion for what it is that we do. So it's easy to talk about it because it's just from the heart. It's just genuine. It's everything you believe.
you got a closing message for people?
Well, I guess to me, I'm always, like number one, again, I go back to my mentoring. Please take care of everybody that you work with because we need good educators. And be careful with that because it's important that, we're tapping into everybody's energy and recognizing that everybody is where they are. And that's okay too. That was a big lesson I had to learn as an educator. Not every person in your building is going to be the teacher that you were, right? And that's okay. So it's recognizing that was hard as a leader in a leadership position, to not assume that everybody is going to approach everything the way that you do or have the same thoughts. So let go of that and lean in to just recognizing that everybody has gifts to share, and find them, tap into them, elevate them, and celebrate them, because that's really important. And then to me, I'm a big fan. Find the joy every day. If I could tell anybody anything, there is so much joy in our schools. It is every single place. So find the joy when the kid comes in to tell you the recess story. Find the joy when the kid is coming in the office for ice for the 400th time. Maybe what they really want is just to connect with you, right? And maybe that's why they're actually there. So see that, value that, and treasure that. Because some people go to work and they work in isolation in a cubicle and don't talk or interact with people all day long. And so realize like a school community is a beautiful place to work and to be a part of. And then to find the joy in that. So I find joy in my hallways each and every day. And I make sure that I have a joyful interaction with students every single day, and then make sure that they can see that their school belongs to them. That's a huge part of what it is that we try to cultivate. You want those students to own that place, and just us to be the adults who are blessed enough to be able to guide them as we're sharing that time with them when they're with us. So yeah, just stay. Remember that first year teacher that you were. My gosh, my enthusiasm was off the charts. So I try to bring that with me each and every day, because again, I can see and feel the joy. And I do believe a lot in that. And I know that in terms of from wellness and from, all of that, we do have to focus in on teaching our students that they can do things and have that mindset of, possibility, and that we're all there, that growth mindset. There's something to that. There really is, because we're all capable of learning and doing better. So I don't know what my words of wisdom are, but find the joy, Shop, and share it as much as you can. Share it, celebrate it, elevate it. It's catchy. And it definitely, helps. Whenever there's an opportunity to interact with another person, try smiling at them and see what happens to their body, right? It changes. It really can. It can change people.
Wow. You got a lot of stuff going on there, Sandra.
I know.
Yeah.
Again, the energy thing. Yeah, there's lots of it. Lots of it.
We're gonna do a part two.
Love it. Love
Wow.
it. Yeah.
Everybody, I definitely am walking away feeling blessed. Feeling just so many, I would say the entire time together, just listening to Sandra, making me feel so good about just making our world a better place, and somebody who cares so deeply about making a difference. Man, oh man. When you get this episode out, please make sure you comment and connect with Sandra. I'm going to have information at the end, information about her book. I'll put a picture up there so you can see it. Just an incredible leader, educator, and grateful to have you on. So,
thank you, Shap.
So thank you for being on today. Please hang on for a sec, okay?
Yeah.
Everybody, just a reminder, please consider subscribing to the podcast. I'd really appreciate that. That's the algorithm. Please like, share, comment. If you'd like to be on the podcast, my contact information will be at the end along with Sandra's. We appreciate you. And as a closing message, it's so darn simple. Sandra just said it. Find the joy. You are awesome. Thank you.